But I want to talk about something that has escaped the attention of the national press because it requires thought. And that's what's going on in Egypt. It is what's going on with this new promotion of anti-Semitism and the modern left signing on to do everything from deny the Holocaust to, just to be just repulsively and repugnantly anti-Semitic in their comments, particularly today as we pause to remember the Holocaust. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser from the American Islamic Forum for Democracy has written extensively about this march of Islamism and this hijacking of sort of a new left sensibility to promote a very ugly old idea, Zuhdi, and that is vulgar anti-Semitism. Welcome to the program.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me back, Vicki.
It is wonderful to have you back, and I always love to point out that you are from Wisconsin. We want to claim you. Yes. So I also want to mention as well, and Dr. Jasser can be easily found online, but he is also the author of the book A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim patriot's fight to save his faith. That is available if you would like to go to your website, aifdemocracy.org.
Yeah, there's actually a couple chapters about growing up in Neenah and how does a moderate Muslim turn out the way he did growing up in Wisconsin and start to be a part of leading the war against the ideas that threaten us.
Well, what I think is noteworthy is that your statement today, and yours was pretty much the only statement I saw. I didn't see one from CARE. I didn't see one from ISNA. I didn't see one from any of the modern left groups. As we pause and we remember the victims of the Holocaust, you took this opportunity as a faithful Muslim to decry this sort of modern reinvigoration of this vulgar anti-Semitism that frankly gave way to the murder of millions and millions of people across Europe.
Yeah, and I think what's been missing from the reporting is, the left has found itself at home with the Islamists who like to collectivize groups, especially Muslims, and lead these movements that are now taking over the Middle East and Muslim-majority countries. But in the West, we really don't see the threat as much because Muslims are barely 1 or 2% of the population. So the left works with them because they sort of fit into their minority checkbox that they can use in order to get back at the right. What we find in the Middle East, the negative opinions about Jews in some countries, such as in Jordan or Pakistan, can get up to 99%, which is just absurd. And you find that many of these countries have not been run by Islamists over the past 2 generations. They've been run by secular dictators like Mubarak. Here you have allies of ours, so-called allies, which were dictators, that had been showing movies like The Protocols of the Elders of Zion and sowing just unbelievable amounts of anti-Semitism that are just off the charts. I mean, the State Department reported about this in their report last year on anti-Semitism, and yet it was just ignored, as you said. And the bottom line is that along with the anti-Semitism that's risen, that the left in Egypt and the left in Tunisia and others have used to demonize Israel and demonize the West and their conspiracy theories, that it really wasn't just a monopoly of the Muslim Brotherhood and the Islamist movement. The left and the Islamists used anti-Semitism to get power in sort of a collectivist way, and lost in the middle were the moderates and the secular liberals that are still trying to unify and find ideas to unify around today. And if only President Obama would understand, and this administration would understand the threat of anti-Semitism, and especially now as we commemorate those millions that lost their lives in the Holocaust, we should remember that if we understand anti-Semitism, we'll understand Islamism and be able to treat it appropriately. But until we do, we'll not be able to fight that threat.
And so now imagine this, and the one notable commentary on the commemoration of the Holocaust is coming from the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. It's not coming from the Democratic Party. It's not coming from the White House. The most poignant statement on the commemoration today came from you, and I think that is I think that is one. I think is a great credit to you, but I think it is shameful that instead what we end up seeing is the left try to bury the overt vulgarity of what's happening. Dangerous as well, because it's resulting in crazy, very harsh policies designed to punish blasphemy, designed to make anybody who would express a different faith other than Islam live in fear. And I'm not just talking about Jews, I'm talking about Christians as well, particularly in Egypt. And nothing. We don't. I mean, here we are supposed to be the country that is home to religious liberty, and we can't speak up on behalf of it for anybody outside the borders of the United States. I find that humiliating and shameful.
And it's really a nonpartisan issue. And the anti-Semitism and hatred towards Jews has been a canary in the coal mine in almost every society in which you see it. Just this weekend in Egypt, you found riots in front of one of the oldest Coptic churches that ended up injuring over 90, killing over 4. And you're finding increase in sectarian violence in Egypt. And when you have a government that rests its entire MO on one faith, on the advancement of one faith's legal system, that being Islamism, it is going to end up sowing increasing amounts of discord between faiths. And now the minority of Coptic Christians in Egypt, which are, basically 8 to 10% of the population, are finding themselves under siege. And I just returned from Egypt, and I testified to Congress a month ago to Congressman Smith's subcommittee from the Foreign Relations Committee in the House about the linkage of anti-Semitism and Islamism. And we find in every one of these societies, you look at Saudi Arabia, the textbooks and how they sowed hate towards Jews and interpreted passages that were just, in a way that made young Muslims hate Jews. The president of Egypt made a statement that Jews were descendants of apes and pigs just 2 years ago. And when we met with his advisors, they basically found some way to say, well, it's out of context. I mean, it's just absurd. And yet nobody's pushing them on it. And our ambassador and our State Department is doing very little to actually use this as a way to tip them towards Revolution 2.0 against the Brotherhood, rather than we're actually lifting up the Brotherhood in Egypt.
That's the problem. So we are, we're providing military resource, we're providing aid. Because we essentially pretended it was some kind of great freedom uprising. The establishment of the power base of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, it was the Great Arab Spring. I remember the signs, it was because this is when we had an uprising here in the Madison capital, and the liberals were saying, from Tunisia to Madison, and, talking about, the various different factions that have been rising up against, at the time, secular dictators. We either turned a blind eye, pretended it was the Tea Party on the right, or the left pretended it was some kind of great uprising of the people, of the proletariat. And what it was the Muslim Brotherhood utilizing dissent to concentrate its power base. And now you're looking at people being prosecuted for blasphemy in a country that used to be a destination for visitors and a destination for economic activity.
And there has been more arrests on blasphemy and apostasy and against speaking out against the president and defaming defaming Islam in the past few months than there were for 5 years under Mubarak. So it's getting worse. And what's interesting, I think the left is finally waking up. Last week, Jon Stewart, we have it linked on the press release we sent out at the American Islamic Forum last week about the arrest of Bassem Youssef, who is called Egypt's Jon Stewart and has by far the #1 program on Friday nights for the entire Egyptian television. And he was arrested for criticizing the president and defaming Islam. And he said, I love Islam. This is not about faith. It's about a autocratic tyrant of the Muslim Brotherhood and Morsi. And Jon Stewart had a 10-minute takedown of Morsi and the Brotherhood. And the left finally, I guess when it's a comedian that gets arrested, they seem to realize that this is a problem. I was a friend of Stewart, and you find the Huffington Post and others finally starting to say, why is Bassem Youssef being arrested? And it wasn't just him. There were 5 or 6 other comedians arrested. So, these are not comedians. These are people that were actually using comedy in order to wake up their populations to the hypocrisy of the presidency.
Of their own government. But, when it's a comedian, when it's random Copts being, murdered by their churches, But hey, if it took a comedian, do I care? No, I do not. There's a whole bunch more, and I'm running out of time here, and I just want to direct people to the tremendous work you guys do over there at AIFD, American Islamic Forum for Democracy. It's AIFdemocracy.org, and get Dr. Jasser's book as well, because more people need to speak out. Your book is called "The Battle for the Soul of Islam: An American Muslim Patriot's Fight to Save His Faith." And you're a great patriot, Zuhdi. Thank you very much for being on the program today.
Thank you, Vicki. Anytime.